What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of No Ducks Given podcast, the podcast where we speak openly and honestly about the highs and lows in life, because vulnerability is a superpower, not a weakness. Today, we have our very first guest on the podcast, and we're going to be talking about the daily steps that you can take to get out of your comfort zone and all of the rewards that follow. Her name is Angel D, and she's a full-time vlogger based here in New York City. And right now, she's been documenting on social media the 365-day comfort zone challenge, where every single day she gets out of her comfort zone in a different way. Welcome, Angel.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. I feel like you're the perfect first guest for this podcast because you and I share something that's really big. It's getting out of your comfort zone and the passion behind that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, what is it to get out of your comfort zone to you?
Doing things that you feel resistance towards or things that I'm scared of. And literally every morning I'll wake up and I'll be like, what am I scared to do? And I just do it. Even little things from getting out of bed or being able to eat breakfast or opening a text, those are things that are out of my comfort zone. And that is kind of the way that I frame my life and how I try to fight through those daily challenges.
I think that's super interesting because for a long time, I feel like I've been in my own perspective of what getting out of your comfort zone means. And sometimes it's pretty extreme. For example, I lived for about 4 years in LA. And when I decided to move there, one of the biggest motivations was I feel like I need to get out of my comfort zone in this very extreme way so I can grow. But sometimes I feel like I disrespected myself throughout the process of getting out of my comfort zone. And I disrespected my boundaries because I was just so committed to the cause. But I think that there are smaller steps that you could take to get out of your comfort zone on a daily basis, which kind of lead you into these big transitions. And I'm wondering, what inspired you to start this 365-day comfort zone challenge series?
I had been doing slightly similar things. Before I was doing, or the very first series I did was 21 days of facing my fears, back when I started making videos. And then I did this other 365-day challenge called 365 Days to Become the Woman I've Always Wanted to Be, right? It was very vague. And I found that the biggest ways that I was able to bring myself towards that person that I wanted to be was doing things that scared me or doing things that were uncomfortable, right? And so when I ended that 1 year challenge, I was like, okay, what am I going to do next? And I conceptualized that it's in order for me to be where I want to be in life, I have to confront my daily fears and get out of my comfort zone. And what if I did that for a full year? I had done it for 21 days, I'd done it for 30 days, but for an entire year, I feel like it could change my life in a big way. And I was so curious as to what could happen. And I knew that would completely transform me. And yeah, that's how I came up with it.
How many days have you been doing it so far?
I think today is 140 something. I need to look at the exact time, but it's around 130 something to 140 something.
Oh my God. So you're almost halfway through the process basically, or you already are?
It's a little under halfway, but it also shows how quickly time goes by and how every day really is precious, and it makes you value every day that you have. So it's been a really beautiful, intensive, emotional process.
What has been the biggest challenge for you so far with this experience?
Honestly, it hasn't even been the challenges. It's been accepting the fact that every day I wake up in my comfort zone and my capacity is different. Some days my comfort zone is getting out of bed. And then the next day my comfort zone could be asking a stranger to dinner and being okay with that oscillation. And I think that's what's been the hardest is understanding that growth is not linear, that some days I have days where I feel like I've really gotten to where I want to be, and some days where I just feel like I'm at ground zero. And so understanding that has actually been the hardest thing. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
I relate to it so hard because I a week ago I was feeling like a freaking winner. I was feeling oh my God, everything in my life is working out. And all the different pieces in my life, my personal life, my professional life. I had just announced even this podcast. I was feeling really good about it.
Congrats, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But I was just feeling so good. And then this weekend, something kind of hit me emotionally. and it made me feel like I took a million steps back, and it made me feel like I was back to where I was a year ago when I was struggling a lot with anxiety, the most anxiety I've ever had, actually.
Wow.
Which was strange because I had just moved to New York, which was a decision that I had made for myself, which is something that I think you can relate to.
Yeah.
And suddenly, like, I'm struggling with anxiety at a level that I never had. And it's like, but I made that decision for myself. It should be fulfilling and amazing, but it's not. So I feel like it's definitely very much an ongoing up and down hill. And it's stressful because it makes you feel like you're constantly failing in a sense. But, you know, you keep going, you get out of bed.
Yeah.
You get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And just move towards a better feeling.
Totally. No, that's totally real. And I think it's just like when you do these like long challenges or just like analyze your life over a long period of time, you have to accept the fact that you are also human and that it's like we are not robots. Like we're not constantly always vying for progress. Sometimes some days are about like survival and acceptance, and some days are about like growth and really admiring that process. So it's like having love and forgiveness for yourself on days that are hard.
Sometimes what I do is I try to think, if I were my best friend, what would I tell myself right now?
I love that. I love that.
Now, I know that you talk a lot about mental health on your page. So could you tell me why you're so passionate about this cause?
So I struggle with depression, anxiety, and I think that I'm so passionate about it because I had so much shame for it for like basically my entire life prior to like 2 years ago. I don't know if I'm passionate about it as much as I want to destigmatize its presence in my life. And it's like, yes, I do struggle with mental health, but like I don't want that to define who I am, or like I don't want it to make me feel less than because of it. And so it's like I talk about mental health and like my struggles as much as I talk about my joys, to kind of level the playing field of like normalizing my human emotions and my struggles. And struggling with my mental health is a big part of my day-to-day existence, and my day-to-day existence is recorded doing my discomfort challenge. And so it is something that I want to talk about because I don't want to hide it in shame. And if I don't speak on it, that means that I have shame for it. And I want to be okay with this part of my humanness that for a long time I felt like made me broken, made me flawed, made me unworthy of being loved. But that is my struggle. And everyone has their own individual struggles. Like some people have like a more physical health struggle, and this is mine, mental health. And I think it's also really beautiful and empowering for me to talk about it because I found this community of people who also struggle in it, and they see themselves in me. And when I was 10, 12, 13 years old, I never had someone like that. Like I was always sent to my room when I was emotional and crying and couldn't control myself, and I didn't have anyone like me to be like, oh, like there's nothing broken with me, like there's nothing wrong with me, I can work through this. And so a big part of why I create content is there's like a little girl in me that wishes that there was someone like me that I could look up to, you know? So I'm almost doing this for my inner child, and I found little girls and young women who see that in me. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. We are so on the same page about all of this, because the reason that I also created this podcast and that I motivate people to get out of their comfort zone so much is because in a bit of a reverse way, I feel like I was always motivated by my family to become anything and to pursue anything, and to get out of my comfort zone.
Oh, it's amazing.
That's something they've always encouraged me to do.
I love your family.
My family's great. And my parents were always like, go abroad, you know, go find more for yourself, go explore the world.
Wow.
Yeah. So I always had that mindset. And I feel so grateful and so lucky to have had mentors like that just to start off my upbringing. And so I feel like those people who don't have that kind of voice, it's going to be so much harder, because it's already hard for me, for someone who has that support. So imagine for those who don't have a role model or someone speaking to them and motivating them and helping them build confidence in themselves. I think it's really cool how you're speaking to your inner child and consequently connecting to other people as well.
Yeah. You know, sometimes you do things to heal yourself subconsciously. And I think, honestly, I'm healing a part of myself that that I neglected for a long time. And I'm just grateful that there's an audience who can also maybe find that healing too, you know?
That's amazing.
Thank you.
So what is like the most interesting feedback you've gotten from your audience so far?
I don't know if I can say most interesting, but I think most shocking is that when I started posting, like I remember there was this one video where I was like, I'm doing 7 things out of my comfort zone today. And I thought it was like not going to do well. I thought it made me super self-conscious because it was like, I'm getting out of my comfort zone because I'm going to drink water today. That's my comfort zone. Or like, I'm going to like have my vitamins today, or I'm going to like go outside and I'm going to get out of bed. And those are things out of my comfort zone. And I was like, this is going to be so embarrassing. People are going to be like, you're weak. Like, that's so lame. And it was actually one of my most viral videos. And all these comments were people that were saying like, wow, like I've never really heard that been verbalized. Those things are hard for me too, but I've been really scared to like admit that to myself and other people. And it made me realize that it's like, when you're like a human being, you forget that like you're surrounded by other human beings, and a lot of us struggle with similar things, and we forget that sense of like community and that sense of like, you know, the person next to me has also felt these feelings. And that's, I think, like, if I don't know if it's interesting as much as like this realization of this connectivity that we all have, right? It's like we all struggle with small things and we all feel shame, and some of us struggle with more things than others, but we hide it. And we don't know that the person next to us could actually be this like friend and support, you know? And so that is something that I've really found beautiful and I guess interesting and mind-blowing and eye-opening, yeah?
I think it's really amazing how you break down getting out of your comfort zone into so small ways, because
Yeah.
I agree that you're creating a safe space for people to feel heard as well. I don't think I ever thought about getting out of bed as a way of getting out of your comfort zone, but it's true because it has been uncomfortable for me sometimes.
Yeah.
This morning it was a little bit uncomfortable, but I was like, I have stuff to do. I have a mission. I'm going to go and I'm going to like do a great interview today.
That's beautiful. And look at you out here.
I'm doing it.
You're doing it. Orange eyeshadow, just looking beautiful.
I love it.
Yeah,
Thank
dude.
you.
But no, it's true. And I
That's
think
sweet.
like that's the thing, right? Is when people think out of your comfort zone, like it's like people think like skydiving or like, you know, like going out and like doing all these big things. And I think I did like these out of my comfort zone adventures or challenges because there's some days I generally did not have the energy to do something like that. So it's like, this is the only thing I'm capable of doing, right? Like it wasn't like, okay, I'm going to do these small things because I want to break it down, but because this is truly the only capacity that I have. And I think like by redefining what your comfort zone can be and celebrating those small wins over a long period of time, you see a change in myself that became more like concrete, that like I knew that I could do it for longer periods of time. I find that like when I do a lot of big challenges, there's short bursts and then I get like tired and I can't do anything for a while, right? But like when I have these little moments, it almost creates a pattern, like a habit, right? And now I have like this impetus to like always talk to the person next to me, like in the bathroom, or talk to the person in front of me at the coffee shop. And I've met so many people that from that, because I've slowly built up that habit. So now it's just a habit and it's part of my personality rather than a singular adventure. And I think that has been a really interesting thing, that now being a person that gets out of my comfort zone is now becoming this habitual process that I've learned through small daily wins and steps, which has been really, really beautiful and powerful. And I think more realistic for an individual on like a larger scale, you know?
I totally agree with you. And I think in a way, maybe, and this is just me reflecting, I think getting out of your comfort zone is accepting your vulnerability, you know?
Yes.
Just being like, I am uncomfortable doing this small thing and I'm going to do it anyway because I don't accept that discomfort, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it's like, it requires you to be really honest with yourself about your weaknesses. And that's really hard. It's hard to admit that you're weak.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I don't know. I just felt that right now.
Vulnerability is not a weakness. It's
a superpower.
It's a superpower. And it's true. Like, I mean, you look at Brene Brown and it's like, she just really talks about the power of vulnerability, but it's like, it's kind of like you can't fully look and see into yourself unless you embrace both your like light or like your bright side and your dark side, or light side or dark side,
yeah.
or whatever, right? And it's like your vulnerable, not that your vulnerability is your dark side, but it's like you have to look at all parts of yourself holistically to truly grow as a person, right? To love both sides. And that's real. Like, in order to get out of your comfort zone, you have to be real with yourself about what makes you uncomfortable. And that can be really hard to face because, you know, we're always comparing ourselves to like past version of ourselves, or I'm always comparing myself to other people. And it's like, well, this person, it's easy for them to like eat 3 meals a day. Like, why can't I? Like, this is so upsetting. And then you shame yourself. And it's like, sometimes you have to accept like, hey man, it's hard for me to do this. Like, I'm being vulnerable. So let me take these small steps, you know, eat like a piece of bread for breakfast for like a week and then move towards that. And like, who cares about what other people define as comfort zone? I'm just going to look towards me. And I think that's real growth. That's real like self-love too. You know?
I totally agree. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm feeling all the feelings right now.
Yeah.
I'm just sucked into this moment. Something that's interesting about your journey, though, is that for a while you went to business school, which is which is kind of crazy for me to think about. Not that it's crazy to imagine you as a businesswoman. It's just that you went from business school in Boston to then moving to California and going to UCLA. You did an arts program, right? Yeah. Those are two different extremes.
I did originally go to like business school, this like small private school in Boston, and I think like I spent most of my like youth and teen years trying to conform and like trying to be like other people in my life, trying to be like my brothers or my parents. Like, I didn't have that like exploring myself like rebellious phase. Like, I was always trying to emulate other people rather than trying to figure out who I was. And so, you know, my parents were entrepreneurs, my brother was in real estate, and I naturally was like, I look up to this person, let me just become that person. And I think that was like a big insecurity because I wasn't happy with who I was. And so I joined the same business club my brother did in high school. I did the same major that my brother did in college. Like, I went to a private school that had like, you know, somewhat of like a good reputation because all of my other friends were doing it, like not because of me. And so sophomore year of college, you know, you go through these like existential crises, and I realized like I have spent my whole life, like 18, 19 years, not knowing who I am. But like, I was always a kid who like, I always brought like a pen and paper, and I was always drawing in the airport. Like, I was always making art. Like, I had art on my walls in business school, and I'm like, why? I remember this one friend of mine was like, why aren't you going to art school? Like, you don't really fit in here. And I was like, dude, you're right. So I literally just dropped out after sophomore year and just let myself be lost. I was always scared to fail. I was always scared to let people down, even though they didn't have those expectations of me. And because I was scared to look like a failure, it made me scared to be myself and scared to look in the mirror and truly realize who I was. And that was a free-spirited art kid, not like a business school finance person. And I didn't want to admit to myself because I wanted to be that corporate pencil skirt girly with the corner office, but I hated it.
But why did you want to be that person?
Because that was like what I saw as like success. I saw in the media that I consumed, within this like business school niche, within my friends who were like all kind of like Ivy League, like, you know, do everything for the resume, for the college applications. Like, it wasn't ever like, dude, what do you love to do? I never thought like, what is your passion? Like, I didn't like explore my passions when I was a kid. I just followed the pack. If I could give any advice to myself when I was young, is like, take a beat and like look at yourself in the mirror and be like, what lights your fire? I never thought about that as a kid. It was what would sound the most impressive. I almost was like an adult at a young age. And then as I become adult, I like started to embrace my inner child. I was wearing blazers and khakis at like 15. I had a LinkedIn at 13. And so now I'm like going backwards and being like, no, I'm chasing like the fire inside of my soul now. You know?
How does it feel?
It's empowering. It's sick. Like, it's awesome. Like, life is really short, man. It's too short to like be preoccupied with like what other people think of you. You know, I post some vulnerable stuff. I have family on my page. I have friends. And at the same time, it's like, dude, I've spent too much of my life caring about what other people think. You know, it's just time to like do me, see what happens.
That's really admirable. I think most people choose the path of copy paste, do whatever everybody else is doing. because it's easier to just do what everyone else is doing than just to find out what's best for you. It's easier to look at the external than the internal. It's hard for you to sit down with yourself and be like, this is not the life that I want.
Yeah.
Because it requires a lot more inner work than just copying what someone else is doing. What you did, dropping out of business school, is really brave.
Thanks.
So what I'm wondering is, like, was there a big moment that triggered you to make that move? Was there a moment of realization, or was it just multiple things that added up and suddenly you just felt that fire and was like, I'm going to pursue the arts?
It wasn't even I'm going to pursue the arts. Like, when I was in business school, I was so depressed. Like, I got my first, like, signs of depression at 17. And I dropped out of business school at 19. And I realized, like, I had no passion or joy for the classes that I was taking. Like, I was struggling to connect with the people around me. I remember there was this guy making a presentation in one of our classes, and he was like, I know that we're all here because we just want to be rich. And everyone started to laugh. And I remember thinking, while yes, I do want to be rich, like, I want more than that. Like, I want passion. I want, like, impact. And I think when I realized I was in a room of people that I felt like I couldn't relate to, I knew I needed to go into a different room. And I think that was the moment where I was like, I need to leave. I didn't know I wanted to do the arts. I just knew I needed to get the hell out of where I was.
That's really interesting. You know, I felt something really similar. God, I just love you.
I love you too. This conversation's incredible.
It's really interesting. I remember when I was living in LA, I was working for this tech company for a while. I had this job in production. It's not that I was unsatisfied with my job. I mean, I was learning a lot. I was still really young. I think I was like 21. Not that I'm not young, but, you know, I was a fetus. I say that you're only really born after you turn 21. That's a joke that I had before. You're a fetus.
Yeah.
You turn 21, okay, now you're 0. But I remember one day I had the opportunity to interview Camila Cabello.
Oh my God.
Yes, and it was not at that company at all. It was through a Brazilian blog that asked me to interview her. I remember that I did the interview. We only had 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it flowed so well. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
And I remember that right after that, I went to the office, and when I arrived, I felt the whole universe warping around me and just feeling like, what the hell are you doing here?
Right.
I just felt physically, I'm getting goosebumps. Yeah. I felt physically just the lack of sense of belonging in that environment. And it's not because there was anything wrong with that place. It was a wonderful company, but I just didn't fit in. I don't know. I just remember that feeling of just, get out. Like, what are you doing here? And that's the thing about your intuition. I didn't know at the time that was my intuition. Didn't really know what that was. When you learn to identify it, it will never shut up. If I had actually followed my intuition at that time, I would have left. And your intuition comes very quickly. You know, it goes in and out, and then it's gone. And then why? Because the intuition is internal. And the external is so distracting that you forget about it.
That's so real. So distracting.
So I forgot about it. And I stayed in LA for another 3 years.
It really be like that sometimes.
Oh my God. It's crazy. And then I realized that I was going through depression as soon as I moved to LA, which was the first time that ever happened to me. And then I got better. And I was like, you know what? I'm feeling good. But then, like, 2 years in, I realized that I was still depressed, but just in a different form.
Ooh, that is so real. Yep.
It was just expressing itself differently. I found comfort within the state of depression, and I had no idea.
Girl, you be saying things right now. Yes.
It's true.
Comfort in that state of depression.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was scary. And so the moment that I actually realized how unhappy I was when I just did a spontaneous trip after COVID to New York in like September 2021. I came here with no expectations. I before I left, people were like, are you thinking of moving to New York? I was like, of course not. Like, everything's fine. I went to New York. I came back to LA. I felt that same feeling.
Yep.
But this time, I knew to recognize it.
Beautiful.
And I was like, I'm not letting it shut up. I am making the decision today. I'm leaving. And then I made decisions every single day towards that. And fortunately, I had just gotten this tattoo of New York City.
Stop.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love it.
Which is my first and only tattoo because I wanted to remember how I felt here.
Stop it right now.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I literally have a similar one for Miami.
Really?
Yeah, I got this one. It's a wave because I wanted to remember how I felt then.
Oh my God, we're tattoo twins.
I know, right? That's amazing.
Oh my God. Yeah. And so the fact that I got that tattoo, it was that constant reminder of you need to go back because I was easily getting distracted again by the things that were going on in LA. And that's the thing. LA is an exciting place. There's always going to be opportunity. But I was really focused on making that move for myself. So that is a little bit of my experience.
That's amazing. I love that. Honestly, listening to like your inner voice, your intuition, whatever like one calls it, it's so powerful. And I think like there is so much outside noise, but when you learn to listen to that, I feel like you can do so much, you know? That's beautiful that you did that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's hard sometimes to listen to it. Sometimes I think I judge my own intuition almost, if that makes sense. So I'm like, I'm judging myself for feeling a certain way about a situation or about someone.
The more you judge yourself, the more you're almost gaslighting yourself. Like just listen to the voice in this kind of neutral way. And that's something that I struggle with a lot. But it's like, yeah, judging yourself is so difficult, and it feels like you're putting yourself in your own prison, you know? I'm learning this is how to just listen and observe and then kind of like see yourself from like an objective point of view. It's hard, but yeah, I do it all the time, and it's painful. It's like a physical pain to judge yourself, but I don't know, man. I feel like it's like this construct of society that does that, because it's like that judgment comes from something. It comes from your upbringing. It comes from like people in your life who have put that perspective in your head, and like that like makes you smaller. That makes you like scared, and that's like our whole battle in life, I think, is fighting that voice.
Which is why I think it's so hard to just make big moves for yourself, like you moving from Boston to LA. That's why I admire that so much, because you're still going to be listening to all those voices that are telling you should be in business school, even if there's nobody actively telling you that.
Yeah.
It's there.
Seriously. There's no one. It's just you.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Sometimes you create like expectations that nobody is expecting you to meet. Like you create a problem that doesn't exist. And then you're pursuing that whole career thinking this is what people want from me. And they're like, I don't care. I just want you to be happy.
Yeah, you literally like that. I think it's so wild how much like we create our own problems. Like I remember talking to my parents and they're like, we never told you to go to business school. We never told you to do this. Like I was like, yeah, but I thought. They're like, we didn't expect that. That was just kind of like what I created in my head. And it's like, wow, the mind is such a powerful thing. It can create realities for yourself.
Ooh, it's scary, isn't it?
It's terrifying, right? Like, I mean, personally, like my mind is my worst enemy. It's not. I've always had really supportive like friends, and like my family is relatively supportive, but like the least supportive person in my life sometimes is me. You know what I mean? So it's just wild how the mind functions and can encourage you but also like push you down.
Has it ever happened to you when you're just like in your living room sitting there alone, and then you're thinking of this problem, and suddenly within 5 minutes the problem has gone from this to this?
Yeah, it's wild.
And like there's like fire in your mind, everything's on fire, the world is going down, but actually the problem is still just right here, but you're living and experiencing this terror in your mind that you're creating.
Right. Sometimes I cry. Like it's just so much. It just went from here to here, and then you start bawling because it's like, this is so stressful.
I mean, that was me yesterday.
Valid.
I'm just grabbing something that happened just like 12 hours ago.
Yeah.
So I texted my friend.
Yeah.
About the problem I was having, and she was like, stop talking, go take a shower, go move. Do something else, like because when you're just sitting there with your thoughts, it can just be the worst thing ever, because as much as we can be our best friends, we can also become our worst enemies, because we know all of our triggers, you know.
It's terrifying.
And I think that's also how we end up sabotaging situations too.
Oh my gosh, self-sabotage is evil. No harm has ever been done as much as like one's harm to oneself. I don't think anyone has sabotaged my life as strongly as I have. You know,
that's strong. Yeah,
I mean, it's real. Like I have supportive people in my life, but I think like, and my parents have told me this, the only enemy I have is myself. I remember my first year at UCLA, like I had an internship at like a big museum. I didn't even show up the first day because I didn't feel like I was deserving of it. And that has happened to me numerous times, because I got into what was my dream school. I got into UCLA as a transfer.
I can see the logo there.
It's great. I love this vest. I love UCLA. I just never felt like I deserved getting into UCLA. So like subconsciously, I would enroll in classes, never go, and just like take the fails. Like shit's crazy.
Wow.
And so it's like self-sabotage has always been really bad for me. Like
did you graduate or
barely? So that's why like doing these challenges for me is a big deal, because I'm unlearning a very, very deep-seated pattern of self-sabotage. I was a gifted kid. I was given a lot of opportunities. The one thing I wasn't gifted with was like self-confidence and good mental health. And
what do you think caused that? Was there something that happened to you or an environment you were exposed to that made you feel these things?
I mean, I was always like a really emotionally intense kid. Being an emotionally intense kid in an immigrant family is really, really difficult. And not to say that like every person with this struggle kind of transforms into someone that self-sabotages heavily, but it is to say that like, because I was not taught at a young age to deal with my intensive emotions, they became destructive, not physically, but emotionally towards myself. And so that is kind of the ways that I learned to deal with kind of the shame that I developed at a young age for being someone who felt deeply, who cried a lot, who had emotions that in my spaces that I grew up with, no one could understand, right? And so every person kind of deals with, you know, their struggles as youth in different ways. I don't blame my family because they helped me get to a place where they needed me to be. I was financially supported. They gave us a great roof over our head. But having a kid with mental health issues that I didn't get diagnosed with until recently must have been hard for them, and they didn't know how to deal with it. I grew up kind of with this coping mechanism of self-sabotage that got worse and worse as I got older. And it's really only the last 3 years that I've dealt with that. Like, I always think if I had dealt with this earlier in my life, I would have been a lot more successful, you know? And now I do these challenges to fight. Every day is a fight against what I've done and who I hope to be.
I think this is a really big representation of how you took your weakness and you made it into a strength.
Yeah, I mean, I think like, you know, I think we all have that time where we look ourselves in the mirror and we're like, if I don't change this shit, 30 years down the line, I'm going to be living a life I hate. Like closer and closer to my deathbed, filled with regrets that I should have done this and this and this in my youth. And I do not want to be haunted by those ghosts. And that is why I'm doing this. Like, I would be doing this whether the camera was on or not, because there came a point where I hated the life I was living. I was scared of the person that I was becoming. And I wasn't happy with the person I was looking at in the mirror. And when you look at yourself in the mirror and you're not happy, not because of looks, because of the choices you've made, it's a different form of prison, a different form of torture. Sometimes you gotta be okay with the mistakes you've made and try the best to make the most of the time you have on this world.
There's no such thing as too late, you know?
So real. I think that's the biggest mistake we make as humans is like, we think that if we're not rich by like 25 or like not in love by this age or like haven't found our passions by this age, it's too late. And that mentality has held me back so much. Like I was really gifted at dance at a young age, but I thought I wasn't going to be a good dancer because I didn't learn dance in elementary school when like I was starting in middle school. I was good at basketball, but I didn't think I would get on the basketball team in high school because there were girls that started in middle school, right? And so I had this too late mentality. But the reality is there is no timeline for how one's life should be lived. And I think if we all went into that, not comparing ourselves to other people's races, we could live our lives in the most beautiful and authentic ways, right? Like, we're all doing life for the first time. So just live it, you know?
That's so comforting.
Yeah.
I needed to hear that.
That's for real. Like, it's like, like I do the deathbed test, right?
Ooh, what is that?
On my deathbed, am I going to regret this decision, this mindset? If I want to like learn how to, I don't know, salsa dance. But there's a part of my head that's like, it's too late. It's like, look, on my deathbed, am I going to regret not learning at my 20 something just to salsa dance for fun? You know, or if like I don't move to this city, right? Am I going to regret this on my deathbed? Because at the end of the day, like, it's not about the resume. It's about, we got a certain amount of years in our life. And like, we don't know how many years that is, but we act like we're living forever when really it's all finite. We don't know if we're going to wake up tomorrow.
I think we're constantly caught up in human existence with thinking that we will live forever and also being so aware that we're going to die. And so I think we kind of fluctuate which one is dictating our decisions sometimes.
That's so valid.
You know?
Yeah.
I think for the most part, I'm kind of like, I'm a very time sensitive person. I'm very much against avoiding uncomfortable things or situations if I feel like growth is on the other side or
that's awesome.
the path that I'm meant for. What makes me anxious is the idea of not doing what I'm meant to be doing right now and
that's
just
so healthy.
prolonging the problem. It is, but again, sometimes it means that I push myself too hard. I have to really evaluate, like, where is this feeling coming from? Is it from a place of confidence or insecurity?
Right.
Because sometimes you just want to face something because you're feeling so insecure about it and you want to know what's real or not.
Whoa, I never thought about it like that.
Things I think about before going to bed.
Wow.
Yeah. So
yeah,
it's hard. These are things that I struggle with, like, constantly, because I'm so proactive about let's get it, let's make it happen. And I value time so much that sometimes I rush it, and you have to be patient. So yes, time is sensitive. We're gonna die, but life is also just happening, and it has to take its time and natural course. So I think finding that balance is the tricky part.
We're almost like opposites in that way. Like, it's like, I'm terrified of confrontation, of like doing the hard thing. So it's like, it takes me so long that I'm just like, please, I need to do it. And it's so, I always like look towards people like you and I'm like, your life must be so easy. You just like do things and like you don't have to go through that. You're just doing it all the time. And like, wow, that's like incredible. And it's so interesting seeing like what you see is like the other side of that, because all I see is, man, I just need to be like that. I need to be like that. There's no downside to that.
No, there is plenty of downside. Absolutely, there's a lot of downside to it. It's scary, you know?
Yeah.
My emotions fluctuate so much throughout the day that sometimes I will feel that rush to get something done and be like, let's resolve this right now, you know?
Yeah.
And so sometimes I feel so much that I just force myself to sit with it. And I'm like, just sit with it for a day, sleep on it. How do you feel tomorrow? And then when I've demagnified the problem, only then I make a decision is what I'm trying to do. Because whenever I'm impulsive, then I like beat myself up for it a lot. You know? So if someone like texts me, and I sometimes, like, especially if it's a business email or if it's a friend and we're dealing with some conflict, if I reply to them right away, the first thing I think of, I always regret it. Wow. Yeah. It's never the right response.
Right.
I always have to sit with it. But sometimes, you know, I think my insecurity to sit with it, because it's also just uncomfortable, you know, sitting with the problem and thinking about that message that is there, that confrontation is there. I must deal with it. So it feels like a monster to me staring at me right there.
Right.
That self-discovery process, that daily thing, it's exhausting.
Life is hard as fuck.
I wish that I wanted to become a lawyer. Not to say that it's an easy profession at all.
Yeah.
But there's a path, you know?
Right.
You know what you got to do to become a lawyer. It's so uncomfortable for me to have sometimes to wake up every day and be like, what are we going to do today for my business to grow on social media?
Oh, it's so stressful.
Wow.
So stressful.
Because you don't know what people want. You don't know how the algorithm is going to behave. I mean, you were saying earlier how like the video that you didn't expect at all is what went viral.
And the things you try really hard on are like, they just flop. And you're just like, what do you want from me? Please just tell me, algorithm, humans.
Content creation and just being an artist, there's no formula.
Constant state of discomfort.
Constant.
Every day is out of your comfort zone. It's like fun, but like stressful at the same time. Like you really compromise that that straight path, that stability for passion of the heart. But like
sanity
stress
is compromised.
Yeah, sanity, stress, mental health a little bit. But then it's like, it's also just when it's fulfilling, it's freaking fulfilling.
Yeah.
Like it really is when you touch people or like when you do a project that really you're proud of, like, wow, that rush is like no other. So that's the toss up, you know, between stability and passion.
Those are the things that motivate me. Also, just the small moments of gratefulness that I get from my audience. I'm still growing my social media platform, but sometimes like I get some comments, like especially from a video I posted last year, which I think was my most vulnerable video, called I'm a Liar. in which I talk about the relationship of lying to yourself and how we're constantly doing it.
Oh gosh, pain, emotional
Oh,
damage.
so much pain. And I even included in that video an audio message that I had recorded for myself, because I record audio messages on my phone for years.
What? That's
just
pretty cool.
just me talking to myself. It started when I was living in LA. I really didn't have friends to talk to, so I just started talking to myself.
Yeah.
And just the day that I got back from that trip to New York to LA, I recorded a voice message in my car. I was actually driving. My hands were off my phone. My dad works for traffic safety. Hands off phone, okay? I was driving, looking towards the road. Nice and safe. But I just start yelling like crazy. And I included that in the video because I wanted to show the peak, in a sense, of lying to yourself. Like, you don't want to get to the point where you feel like your inner self is yelling at you. I was hoping that the video would make some sort of impact in people, because I wanted to help them to recognize if they're lying to themselves before it happened. Not that I know all the tools, but I'm thinking, well, maybe this will alarm them in a way. You know, look at this girl going crazy on screen.
Yeah.
And I received a comment from someone who was like, I was crying when I watched your video. It is exactly what I needed to hear. But I remember that we started exchanging voice messages, and I'm like, I have no idea who this person is. I've never met her, but I feel her so much in this. And so those moments make it worth it, I think, with the content creation.
Yeah.
The instability is worth it when you're making such a beautiful impact.
I mean, there's such power in like content creation. Is like you have the ability to touch the lives of people that you may never meet in person in countries you may never go to. And that's so beautiful. Like, that's the power that social media can hold, is inspiring from a distance and in these far away places, or like in cities that are like thousands of miles away. That's incredible. Social media can, in so many ways, when yielded the right way, be a tool for good and inspiration. And I think even what you're doing right now is like really sharing this message of like the power of vulnerability is something that needs to be shared over to the entire world. So it's super exciting that you're doing this.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course.
I mean, I really hope to motivate people to be more vulnerable, because I think that's where your true self is. Denying yourself who you are also stops yourself from following the right path.
Yeah.
You know, so as soon as you're able to be honest and be vulnerable with yourself first, then you're able to be with other people and make that impact and inspire other people as well, you know. So I want to take it back a second to kind of like, where do you think your career is going now? Like, what is your purpose with your work? Where is that going for you?
I can't say that I know what I'm going to do 10 years down the line. But what I do know is that doing things out of my comfort zone in this last 3 months has made me completely change the way that I've seen the world, the people that I've met, the way that I wake up in the morning. And I want to continue living that life. So whether it be social media, whether it be whatever creative endeavor I do, I just know that today I want to make videos that inspire me, inspire other people, explore the world, and we'll go from there.
That's the perfect response. I mean, because you just have to start, right?
You just have to start.
The next actions will come from that beginning, but you won't really know what to do unless you do something about it now.
You should do something. All I know is that I have felt more on the right track than I have ever been at this moment. Like,
how does it feel to be on the right track?
What I have realized in being true to myself and pursuing a job that I want and pursuing the kind of life that I want because I'm making different decisions is that life and the world is truly what you make of it. It's truly based on small decisions, based on being authentic to yourself. If I hadn't said hi to this one artist, then I would have never been here. And I met that artist because I had gone to a gallery opening. And like, I talked to the most intimidating people in the room. And it was these 3 European artists. They invited me to an artist talk, who I met another artist. And then all of a sudden I'm in this world that I never thought I would be. And that's the incredible thing about being authentic and living in the moment and living true to yourself, is that the world is full of decisions, full of perspectives, full of beautiful moments.
I think the way you described it is almost like you're putting together the pieces of the puzzle that you don't even see. But the puzzle does quickly start coming together when you start making these daily decisions to get out of your comfort zone or go to an event. And then you will have a conversation there which you didn't even know you needed to have, but was there waiting for you. And you will find the path for you or the next steps that you should be taking. But it's about putting yourself out there and also just telling people what you need.
Yo, that's real. People are so willing to help you when you like voice what you need.
Yeah.
Because people want to help.
And that goes from work opportunities to also personal life. I feel like in
Yep.
relationships too, like you need to tell your partner or your friend what you need in terms of communication. But it's okay that you don't know right away what it is. It's just a matter of taking that daily step of putting yourself out there, getting out of your comfort zone like you do.
Yeah.
And then I think you just find your path along the discomfort.
Exactly. I think the thing is like understanding that like different people function different ways. Like some people can function off of a 5 and 10 year plan. Some people don't know what they're doing tomorrow and like just function on like what they're doing today. And so it's like just know how you function and then work off of that. And you never know where you'll end up in life.
You just have to like take a bet on yourself.
Take a bet on yourself.
Have a little faith.
Terrifying.
What if everything works out in your favor?
That's what I'm saying.
You know, we always just prepare for the worst. I feel like it's a defense mechanism thing.
Totally.
But what if we prepared for the best? Because I think when we do, then our actions are for the best. You know, we're behaving from a place of confidence of like, that's mine, I deserve it. And I think when you write, it's also a great way to materialize your ideas and the things that you want. So that's why I like journaling too. It also helps slow down your emotions.
Yeah, when you write things down, you can kind of sort through your feelings a lot. But just knowing that for like 20 minutes a day, I can just say whatever, write whatever, that is such a great feeling because life can be really hard. And knowing that you have 20 minutes to just say however you feel, especially someone who like struggles with mental health, who feels deeply, that is truly unmatched. A really great experience.
What I love about journaling is that it validates everything you feel, but it doesn't mean it matches reality necessarily. And so it's a moment for you to observe your feelings and be like, okay, but what's actually happening here?
Sure.
I think the final thing I want to ask you is, what are maybe signs that people should be looking for when they're growing up of self-sabotage or that they're putting themselves out of their comfort zone in the wrong way?
The times when I realized that my self-sabotage was at its worst is when I looked myself in the mirror and I'm like, who is this girl? This is not who I wanted to be. This is not the girl that I know I can be. And when you have that moment, and if you have that moment, then that's a sign to reevaluate. At least that's what happened with me. As you said, you can lie to yourself for a really long time, but there will come a point where the lies unravel and you got to be honest with yourself.
Be grateful for every day that you took a new step and got out of your comfort zone.
Beautiful. Absolutely.
This was awesome. Thank you so much.
It was so great. Thank you. This was such a lovely experience. I'm so honored to be on your show, and I'm so excited to see like where this show will take you. Like, this is gonna be really cool.
I really appreciate it. Where can people find you?
So I have Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. It's Hot Pink Sunrise, HOT Pink Sunrise. Used to have pink hair. Used to surf at Sunrise. That's where it came from.
I had blue hair 2 years ago, so I get it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Angel. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I love it.